This is gonna kind of be a fun show, thinking about like how we can change our health and improve it. Some of the joys of, being in a physical body and being like, wow, like how great can I feel? And what are some of the ways that I can kind of upgrade how I treat myself? So, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Monica. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm happy to share.
Yeah. So tell me about why you decided to write this book and some of the things that you're learning about.
Well, that's a big question, but let me
Mm-hmm.
start with the beginning, childhood, which is when, uh, well, everybody's born with a different constitution.
Sure.
And I was born in a very delicate body. I probably didn't get the best genes in the genetic pool from my parents. And so I spent a lot of time at home, sick, with colds, infections, sometimes going to the hospital for special care.
Mm.
And on my third trip to the hospital, I realized when I came out feeling weaker than before I went in and weighing 90 pounds, there had to be a different way.
Mm-hmm.
That's where my journey began.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I,
Because sometimes you realize, okay, so here's the problem. And what are some of the solutions that you found?
well, my first step was to try to gain weight
Uh huh.
because I looked kind of pathetic at 90 pounds.
Mm.
and
Well, you didn't feel healthy.
also,
Yeah.
yes. So as a teenager, I just read nutritional books and things
Sure.
that my mother had in her library
Mm-hmm.
and learned, okay, carbohydrates and protein add pounds.
Yeah.
So I started there and that helped me. And then I was more interested in, I thought, well, there's a link with food.
Mm-hmm.
There's a definite link with food. So
Mm-hmm.
I studied home economics.
Mm-hmm.
I got a degree in home economics, specializing in foods and nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
And then I learned all about meal preparation, meal planning, different
Mm-hmm.
techniques. And then I became very excited about cooking
Mm-hmm.
and all of these things,
Yeah,
which
because
is,
it can be really fun.
it's creative work.
Yeah.
And
And healing.
yes, then on the campus, there was a bulletin board and I saw a hatha yoga class.
Oh,
And
yoga.
exactly. And this was kind of the beginning of the organic movement and
Sure.
vegetarian diets and
Yeah.
things. And I signed up for the class, and the instructor kept telling me, well, you're very good at this. And I
Oh,
found that
that's
I
so
calmed
nice.
my nerves and
Mm-hmm.
I felt better. And she also recommended a vegetarian diet.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I became a vegetarian.
Yeah. Well, it really matters, like your body type and, because, it doesn't work. Every diet doesn't work for every person. But I know that, yeah, I can imagine, I'm anti inflammation keto. And so there's a lot of, beans and peas and nightshades. There's a lot of things that I can't eat. But it's really interesting how we can explore what foods are actually really kind of bad for everyone, like sugar, you know, that we can actually like notice, okay, what, creates inflammation pretty much for everyone, right? So, what are some of the things that you recommend for people, like ways to, for instance, get sugar out of your diet?
Well, in Recipes for a Good Life, there's a whole section on that, and it's quite a large section.
Mm.
And I took the recommendations from Nancy Appleton's Lick the Sugar Habit.
Oh,
These are just very simple
cute.
things,
Yeah,
like don't have sugar in your house.
right.
Instead of going for a tea or coffee at the local bakery with a friend, go for a walk, a nature walk.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what were some of the others? If you really have some kind of intense addiction to sugar and to sweets, you might want to consult with a nutritionist or a health coach that could help you through it, or partner with a friend so you both decide we're going to cut sugar out
Mm-hmm.
and you make it fun.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually the key. to get something going and do it, you need to make it fun.
Yeah. Well, and you can also do a lot of substitutions. Like, don't use like actual sugar, yet like use a different kind of sweetener, like dates. Like that's a lot of like the vegans, my vegan friends, they sweeten a lot of things with dates or bananas.
That's true, you can, but you also have to be careful because natural sweeteners, which are better for you than
Mm.
white processed sugar, can also raise blood sugar level. You
Mm.
should limit sweeteners to a half a teaspoon a day.
Mm.
And you should be careful with dates also because they are very sweet.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes,
And figs. Figs are super, like, don't they high glycemic? Something like that?
yes, they can be. And
Mm-hmm.
that's something that another feature in the book is
Mm-hmm.
instead of addressing the glycemic index, which I think can be very complex and you need to see all the numbers, I simply talk about alkaline forming foods as opposed to
Oh,
acid forming foods.
that's really wise.
Yes, because you can just simply see a list of where you find the alkaline forming foods and where you find the acidic forming foods.
Mm.
And if you look at those lists, you will see that the alkaline forming foods are vegetables.
Right.
Vegetables, vegetables, and more vegetables.
Mm-hmm. Like, give us 3 examples of alkaline forming foods.
Well, vegetables are the number one superfood. That's what nutritionists say today.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, greens, spinach,
Oh,
carrots,
yeah, spinach.
cauliflower,
Totally.
broccoli,
Yeah.
kale, chard,
Yeah.
beans.
Rainbow chard.
Yeah, that's right. So all these foods are more alkalizing. And I had a client when I was in France that she had really serious osteoarthritis.
Mm.
And so I analyzed her dietary intake, and she loved these little tangerines, which were very acidic and high on the glycemic index scale.
I see.
And so we decided to remove those and increase her vegetable intake, which was not very high.
Mm.
I saw her about a month later at a women's gathering.
Mm-hmm.
She looked like a different person.
Oh.
She looked like younger. She had more energy,
Oh,
vibrant.
that's so wonderful.
And she immediately came up to me and thanked me because it was something simple that she
Right.
did, and it made such a huge difference.
Right. Oh, that's so interesting that, tangerines, I mean, such a small change could make so quickly affect a huge transformation. That's awesome.
That just shows how important the food you take in is and what a difference it can make in your life.
Right. So what are some of the other, recipes that you've experimented with over the years? What are your top choices?
Well, what we need to do right now is have a wide variety of foods.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with the American diet is that it's too limited. People eat the same things over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
They get into food habits. Every morning I have oatmeal with maple syrup
Right.
or cinnamon. No, you have that one morning, you have something else the next morning. You switch things around all the time. Spices are key.
Mm.
Spices are the most nutrient-dense food on the planet.
Mm-hmm. And what about probiotics?
Well, if your doctor recommends that, yes, but you can get that same probiotic
Action?
action, yes, with fermented foods.
Oh, exactly, because those are naturally fermented, of course. Like, yeah, I was thinking about kombucha and then kefir. Like, those were very healing for me in my journey because I had IBS, intestinal bowel syndrome.
Oh boy.
So when I started, making my own kefir, like it really helped with the inflammation. But I can, not everyone probably can make those, not everyone has a friend who has kefir. You know what I mean? Although
Well,
ask around because you might You might know more than you think, right?
That's true. But,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, now there are natural grocery stores everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
and they have a wide range of fermented foods and,
Mm-hmm.
things that are probiotic foods. And they even, I mean, the commercial people are well aware of it. Probiotic food. You see that right on
Right.
the label. So
Yeah.
it's not hard to find a probiotic food. And, go Japanese. Try miso soup for
Oh,
breakfast.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, and Rainbow Foods and then the Food Mill, they just have such a lovely array of both, I mean, you can get your sweet tooth on at the Food Mill too. Even though, obviously it's going to have molasses in it probably or something like that. There are so many good choices.
Yes. Yeah. We're living in a time period where there's not a shortage of choices and everything is very accessible.
Hmm.
We don't have to go out and milk a cow or, you know,
Right.
hoe the garden. We
Right.
can actually just find them at our doorstep just about.
Right. Yeah, totally. So, what are some of the other ways that you have counseled people to help them shift their diet and find success?
Well, generally, it starts with an analysis of their current dietary intake.
Mm-hmm.
3 to 5 days of writing down everything they
Oh,
eat,
food journaling.
along with how much and when they eat.
Sure.
Because you do want to give a relatively um, a nice break of time
Mm-hmm.
between meals for several reasons. You don't want bacteria in the mouth. It is a process that needs to complete itself. And you must allow the body to complete the process of digestion,
Mm-hmm.
which, depending on the individual and the rate of their metabolism, could be anywhere from 2.5 to 3 to 4 or even 5 hours.
Mm-hmm. And so, are you thinking sometimes intermittent fasting, or is that something, a
I
modality that
love
you?
intermittent fasting. It's not in the book because I didn't have room to put it in there, and I thought
Sure.
there would be too many questions about it that I couldn't answer.
Mm.
But personally, I fast one day a week, a 24-hour fast every Friday.
Mm-hmm.
I love it because it gives me a window of time for relaxation, for rest, and doing quiet things that
Mm.
I always put to the side. And the
Mm.
other point is the time you save and the fact that this is one of the best ways to, for brain health, for digestion,
Mm-hmm.
and for the microbiome.
Mm-hmm.
So it goes along with the keto diet as well,
Mm.
because that's the whole
Mm-hmm.
principle behind it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I found so much transformation just from avoiding sugar that, I mean, and it was probably a little bit of a, like, I was a sugar holic, perhaps, because, and especially chocolate, because, I would always go on the radio and like start my show at, I don't know, whatever, 5 p.m. or something. And then, go on the evening shift and like have a huge amount of sugar, but I would just be flying and having such a great time. But I think that was a little bit hard on my body. And so I wonder, like, what are some of the easier things that I could have done, like to, I don't know, lessen the impact, not been so high. Not use that as such a like an easy source of energy. What are some of the other things that I could have tried? Like, what are some of the more nourishing? Because I know that you have a bunch of recipes in your book.
Well, I do, of course,
Mm-hmm.
being a creative cook
Yeah.
and putting all of this together. As I'd mentioned before, the potential of spices
Mm-hmm.
to nourish, to heal. They have antioxidant properties, they have anti inflammatory properties.
Mm-hmm.
And so you want to use those generously. And
Mm.
all the recipes in my book include them because every recipe in here is made for self healing.
Right. So, which spices do you like?
Well,
Cinnamon?
I've got, yes, cinnamon is a common one. It's found everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
and it's anti-inflammatory and so
Has so
forth.
many good properties.
It does,
Yeah.
and
And
so
it's delicious.
that's right. It adds flavor. So sometimes you can get the rush that you need by having nourishing and tasty food in together,
Totally. Yeah.
which is what I've tried to achieve with the recipes in Recipes for a Good Life.
Sure. So, do you have a sample recipe that you can give us right now?
Well, I have to look it up.
Sure. Well, I remember that when you had, so you came to the food mill, which is really close to my house. We looked at some of the things that you had as kind of an appetizer, and I remember that there were dates and spices, and it was really healthy and nourishing. Do you remember that recipe?
Oh, well, maybe you were thinking of the lassi, the Indian lassi.
Oh, yeah. Tell us about
The
that
sweet
one.
and spice lassi, which
Ooh.
that's so easy. If you have a blender or even just a jar,
Mhm.
you can shake up the mixture in a jar for a couple minutes. What you want to do with yogurt is a very heavy food.
Mhm.
And first of all, do not buy non-fat or low-fat. Those are processed foods. If you want to get less food or less fat, dilute it with water.
Mm.
So what happens with a lassi is that you dilute it. It's 1 part lassi and 1 or 2 parts water.
Mm.
So then to make it tasty, you add cinnamon, clove. You can use dates to sweeten, or you can use stevia.
Oh, sure.
You know,
Or monk fruit sweetener is a sweetener that I've experimented with that I personally enjoy.
well, I would be careful with that. It's highly processed.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, limitation,
Sure.
moderation.
Yeah, I wouldn't go hard on it for sure.
Mhm. Yeah. So, but I do in the book, there is a section on stevia, which most people don't understand how to use it.
Mm.
And it's a very sweet, intense.
It's so
Yeah.
intense.
So I use the dropper. The
Mhm.
dropper form is much easier to use. It's much more controllable than the powder.
Mm.
And it also seems to have less of an aftertaste.
Okay, yeah, because that's the stevia aftertaste that I was kind of trying to avoid.
And another way to avoid that is you can use, say, to cut down on natural sweeteners, a 1/4 teaspoon of maple syrup or raw honey, and then a drop or 2 of stevia.
Right.
So that cuts that aftertaste.
Right.
that-
Or maple syrup or something.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Mhm.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much. Where can people purchase a copy of your book online?
Online, they would go to regentpress.net,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a link right there. They can get it directly.
Mm-hmm.
And if they'd like to buy it in person, they can go to Rainbow Grocery Co-op in San Francisco
Mm-hmm.
or to the Food Mill in Oakland.
Yeah, and that's right next to my house in the Laurel District.
Yeah, and it's a very sweet store. If you
Oh,
haven't been there,
totally
you must
sweet.
go.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what are some ways that you can help people think about like how to change their life now, like with the things they have already in their house that ways to think about their food differently?
That's a very good question, and I think that's something that maybe a lot of the listeners are also thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
First, you start from where you are,
Exactly.
and you take it step by step.
right?
And the interesting thing is that nature supports us.
Mm-hmm.
Mother Nature is there for us. And so when you start taking steps on the path, it starts to happen naturally.
Right.
Like you say, okay, what can I give up first? Or let me see, I'm going to get that book. That's step number 1.
Sure.
And then you're going to read through the book and you're saying, well, look, these aren't that hard.
Mm-hmm.
What most people have liked is that the book is very practical
Mhm.
and easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's something something that's generally considered difficult is made easy and attainable.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so you have to have confidence in yourself as well. You have to know that you can do it. And a positive attitude, telling yourself, I'm going to cut sugar out. I'm going to include probiotics or
Mm-hmm.
fermented foods in my diet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to start paying attention to what I eat and
Mm-hmm.
when I eat. See, these are all small steps, but they are going to make a huge difference. They're very attainable and anyone can do them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even, you know, switching to natural sugars or, limiting the amount of sugar, it's been so transformative. Even I don't know, I also make kombucha and that sort of thing. And so it really seems to make a difference, like switching to honey instead of like table sugar.
Well, the way you're describing what you've done is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. How you started by realizing, sugar is not what I should be consuming in such a large amount.
Totally.
And so you started thinking about that. You started thinking about how you could reduce it. And then you found other substitutes
Mm-hmm.
that improved your life. This is nature at work inside of your body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Wonderful. Well, again, let's talk about where you can get. So it's Rainbow Foods,
Rainbow Grocery.
mm-hmm. And then also the Food Mill in Oakland,
Yes, on
California.
MacArthur.
Cool.
And
Well,
I'm often there doing a book signing, and I will
yeah,
probably be there a lot in October and November when the holiday season is up and let people give friends the gift of radiant health.
cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Well, thank you, Monica. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. This has been Get Real Estate. Thanks for joining us.